What would you do if a cop walked up to your window and said, "I just need you to step out for a second"? Most drivers open that door without hesitation because it sounds like a routine request from someone in authority. But the moment your foot hits that pavement, you have just entered a completely different legal situation than the one you were in 30 seconds ago. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to break down are the 4 most deceptive lines cops use to get you out of your vehicle. And knowing each one ahead of time could be the difference between driving away or being placed in handcuffs on the side of the road. I've gone through this with attorneys and body cam footage, and what I found is going to change how you handle every traffic stop for the rest of your life. Here's what you're about to learn: the 4 specific lines officers use and the hidden legal purpose behind each one. The exact words you say in response to each line that protect your rights without creating conflict. Why getting out of your car voluntarily changes what officers are legally allowed to do next. And the Supreme Court cases that back up every single response I'm going to give you. This is not about being difficult or anti-police. This is about understanding the game that is being played so that you are not the only person at that window who doesn't know the rules. And right now, if you don't know this information, you are that person every single time you get pulled over. Here's the reality. Traffic stops are one of the most legally complex encounters an ordinary person can have with law enforcement. And most people treat them like a minor inconvenience. You pull over, you roll the window down, you hand over your documents, and you answer whatever questions come your way because it feels like the cooperative thing to do. But here is what's actually happening on the officer's side of that interaction. The officer is trained to observe, to probe, and to find a legal pathway into a deeper investigation if one exists. Getting you out of the car is one of the most powerful tools available because it changes your physical position, changes your legal exposure, and creates new opportunities for the officer to observe things that weren't visible through a window. Most people have no idea that the decision to step out voluntarily versus being lawfully ordered out are 2 entirely different legal situations with 2 entirely different sets of consequences. When you step out on your own, you have made a voluntary choice. When you're lawfully ordered out, the rules are different. Knowing which situation you're actually in is everything. Let me show you exactly how the first deceptive line works. The officer approaches your window and says, "Can you step out so we can talk more comfortably?" It sounds almost considerate, like they're doing you a favor, like standing outside in the fresh air is somehow better for both of you. But here is what that sentence is actually doing. It is framing the exit from your vehicle as a mutual preference rather than a legal order. And when you step out based on that framing, you have consented to a physical repositioning that opens up a completely new set of legal possibilities. Once you are outside the car, the officer can observe your full body, your gait, your balance, any odors on your clothing, anything visible through the car windows from new angles, and your physical reactions to questions in a way that simply isn't possible when you're seated behind a door. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, no problem," and step out immediately. Then the officer has a full physical observation opportunity they did not have before, and everything seen and noted from that point forward is admissible. Good way. Smart drivers say this: "Officer, am I legally required to exit the vehicle?" Those 9 words. That is your entire response. You're not refusing. You're not being aggressive. You are asking a direct and completely legal question that requires an honest answer. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, the court ruled that officers can order a driver out of a vehicle during a lawful traffic stop. But that ruling applies to a lawful order, not a casual suggestion framed as a preference. If the officer says yes, you are required to exit, you comply calmly and immediately. If the officer says no or doesn't give you a clear lawful order, you have just legally maintained your position inside the vehicle and everything that protection provides. Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because it creates a documented moment where the client either received a lawful order and complied, or did not receive one and appropriately stayed put. Either way, your behavior is reasonable and your rights are intact. Are you starting to see how different this is from what most people actually do during a traffic stop? Drop a like right now if this is already changing how you think about these encounters, because we've only covered the first line and it gets significantly more important from here. The second deceptive line is one of the most commonly used and one of the most effective at getting compliance. The officer leans in and says, "I just want to make sure you're okay. You seem a little shaky." This line is a masterpiece of psychological misdirection because it reframes the exit request as concern for your well-being. You don't want to seem rude to someone who's supposedly worried about you. You don't want to appear defensive when someone is just checking on your health. So you step out to prove you're fine. And the moment you do, you've handed over everything that stepping out provides. Watch what happens with the wrong response. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm just nervous. I can step out if you want." Then the officer has documented that you self-reported being shaky and nervous, and you've voluntarily exited the vehicle, giving them a full physical observation of your condition. Good way. Smart drivers say this: Thank you for your concern, officer. I'm fine right here. Am I being detained or am I free to go? That is your complete response. Polite, calm, legally precise. Here's why those last 9 words matter so much. Am I being detained or am I free to go is one of the most powerful questions you can ask during any police encounter. It forces the officer to define the legal nature of the stop right then and there. If you are being detained, they must have reasonable articulable suspicion, meaning an actual specific reason they can name, not just a feeling. If you're not being detained, you're legally free to leave. This is 100% legal and it is backed by Terry v. Ohio, where the Supreme Court established that detentions require specific and articulable facts supporting reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Vague concern about your appearance does not meet that legal standard. Asking the question out loud on camera puts the officer in a position where they must either justify the detention legally or acknowledge you're free to stay in your car and go. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection against stops that are fishing expeditions dressed up as wellness checks. The third deceptive line is the one that trips up the most people because it sounds like an accusation you need to respond to immediately. The officer says, "Someone called in a complaint about this vehicle. I just need you to step out while I sort this out." Now, your brain is doing 2 things at once. It's trying to figure out who called and what they said, and it's feeling the pressure of being implicated in something. And in that mental scramble, most people step out just to prove they have nothing to hide. Now, listen closely because this is critical. A called-in complaint, even a real one, does not automatically give an officer the legal authority to order you out of your vehicle. The complaint would need to meet certain standards to justify a detention. And even if a detention is justified, that is different from you voluntarily stepping out on a friendly suggestion. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. The word "sort this out" is doing enormous heavy lifting in that sentence. It implies a collaborative process. It implies that your cooperation in stepping out is part of resolving the situation together. It is not. Stepping out does not resolve anything for you. It only creates new opportunities for the investigation. Bad way. Most drivers say, "A complaint? About what? I didn't do anything. Let me step out and explain." Then the driver is outside the vehicle actively explaining themselves, potentially contradicting future statements, and giving the officer a full physical assessment all at the same time. Good way. Smart drivers say this: "Officer, I understand. What is the nature of the complaint and am I being detained?" 2 questions, delivered calmly. The first question asks for specific information. The second question asks for the legal status of the encounter. Both questions are completely reasonable and completely legal. Former police officers have confirmed this works because it shifts the conversation from emotional reaction to procedural clarity. You are not panicking. You are not arguing. You are asking for information that you have every right to know, and the officer's answer to both questions tells you exactly what your next move should be. If you've made it this far through this video, you're already ahead of 99% of drivers on the road. Seriously, most people clicked away after the first minute. But you're still here, which means you actually want to know this. Drop a comment right now saying, "I'm still here because the 4th line is the one that defense attorneys say is the most sophisticated of all, and you need to hear it." The 4th deceptive line is the quietest, and in many ways the most dangerous. The officer has already asked you questions through the window. The conversation has been going for a few minutes, and then they say this: "Tell you what, just hop out and we'll get you on your way faster." It sounds like an offer. It sounds like stepping out is actually in your interest because it speeds up the process. And after sitting in your car for several minutes, and and wanting the whole thing to be over, that offer can feel genuinely appealing. But watch what happens when you accept it. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Yeah, okay, let's just get this done," and step out. Then the stop extends significantly because the officer now has physical access and observation that opens multiple new investigative avenues. What was supposed to be faster takes 3 times longer. Good way. Smart drivers say exactly this: "I appreciate that, officer, but I'm comfortable waiting right here." 10 words. No hostility, no argument, no legal claim that might escalate things. Just a calm, firm, polite statement of your preference. This is 100% legal. You are expressing a preference for remaining in your vehicle, which is your constitutionally protected space. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos in the encounters where drivers stayed calm, stayed in their vehicles, and politely declined to exit without a lawful order were consistently shorter and less invasive than the encounters where drivers stepped out voluntarily. The premise of the line is that exiting speeds things up. The reality is that exiting creates new opportunities that extend the stop. Your calm refusal to exit, stated as a personal preference rather than a legal declaration, removes those opportunities entirely and does not give the officer any emotional or confrontational hook to escalate from. Now, let me walk you through how all 4 of these tactics come together in one real traffic stop scenario. You're driving on a Saturday afternoon. You get pulled over for a broken taillight. You hand over your license and registration. The officer goes back to his car, runs your plates, comes back, and now the lines start. First, he says, "Can you step out so we can talk more comfortably?" You say, "Officer, am I legally required to exit the vehicle?" He says, "No, just easier to talk." You say, "I'm comfortable right here, thank you." He says, "You seem a little nervous. I just want to make sure you're okay." You say, "Thank you for your concern, officer. I'm fine right here. Am I being detained or am I free to go?" He says, "There was a complaint about a vehicle matching yours in the area." You say, "I understand. What is the nature of the complaint and am I being detained?" He pauses and says, "Look, just hop out and we'll get you on your way faster." You say, "I appreciate that, officer, but I'm comfortable waiting right here." At that point, the officer either issues your ticket for the taillight and sends you on your way, or he has to produce an actual lawful order with an actual legal justification. And if he doesn't have one, he has nothing. You have responded to every single line calmly, politely, without arguing, without creating conflict, and without giving up a single protection. Compare that to the wrong way, where you exit on line 1, explain yourself on line 2, step further away from your car on line 3, and wait outside while the officer takes his time on line 4. Same stop. Completely different outcomes. Next week, I'm dropping the video on what to do when a cop brings a K9 unit to your traffic stop and the dog allegedly alerts. That situation escalates in seconds, and almost everyone handles it completely wrong. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that video could genuinely save you from a search that goes further than you ever imagined. Here's your quick recap of everything you just learned. When an officer asks you to step out for comfort, you ask whether you are legally required to exit before you move an inch. When they frame it as concern for your health, you thank them, confirm you're fine, and ask if you're being detained or free to go. When they mention a complaint, you ask for the nature of the complaint and whether you are being detained. And when they offer a faster resolution if you step out, you tell them calmly that you're comfortable waiting right where you are. 4 lines, 4 responses, all of them polite, all of them legal, and all of them dramatically more protective than what most drivers do without thinking. Hit subscribe so you're ready when that K9 alert video drops, because it builds directly on everything you learned today. Smash that like button if this just changed how you're going to handle your next traffic stop, because that's exactly what this channel is here for. And drop a comment telling me which of these 4 lines you've already heard during a stop, because I want to know how many of you have already been through this without knowing what was actually happening. Stay safe out there.